Welcome back to Beyond the Scoreboard. Every season begins the same way. The gym is always full of energy. New faces, returning players, excitement, nervousness, possibility. As coaches, we watch everything. Who can shoot, who can defend, who can communicate, who competes, who stands out immediately. Before long, something interesting begins to happen, though. Without realizing it, our minds start writing stories. That's going to be our leader. She is incredibly confident. He is probably going to struggle. That player looks mentally tough. I don't think this athlete is ready. The remarkable thing is that we often begin creating these stories long before we have truly met people standing in front of us. That it isn't only true in coaching, it's part of being human. Our minds naturally look for certainty. We observe behavior, then we quickly create conclusions. When someone is quiet, we assume they lack confidence. Someone speaks often, we assume they are the leader. Someone reacts emotionally, we assume they lack composure. Someone challenges us, we assume they have a poor attitude. Well, the more I coach, the more I realize how dangerous those assumptions can become. Because behavior and identity are not always the same thing. Silence is not always insecurity. Confidence is not always maturity. Emotion is not always weakness, and compliance is not always commitment. And leadership is certainly not always the loudest voice in the room. Perhaps one of the greatest mistakes we make as coaches is believing that first impressions tells us who people are. Experience has taught me something completely different. Experience hasn't made me better at judging people. It has made me slower. Slower to label, slower to criticize, slower to praise, slower to decide who someone is. Because over the years, I have watched athletes completely change my first impression of them. I have seen quiet freshmen become remarkable leaders. I have seen highly talented athletes struggle to earn the respect of their teammates. I have seen role players become the emotional heartbeat of an entire program. I have seen athletes who appeared confident quietly battling anxiety every single day. I have seen players everyone looked become the people the team depended on most. Those experiences have forced me to ask a different question. Not who is the best player, but who is this person? That may be the most important question a coach can ask. Because before we coach performance, we coach people. Every athlete walks into the gym carrying a life that began long before basketball. Family, friendships, success, failures, pressure, dreams, fear, fate, disappointment, expectations. Some carry confidence, others carry doubt. Some desperately want to lead, others simply hope they belong. As coaches, we don't always see those things immediately, but they are there every single day. That's why observation has become one of the most valuable part of my coaching. Not observation to judge, observation to understand. When I walk into practice, I certainly notice basketball, but I also notice people. Who is unusually quiet today? Who normally smiles but suddenly seems distant? Who encourages teammates without anyone asking? Who accepts responsibility after making a mistake? Who blames others? Who sits alone before practice? Who is everyone naturally drawn toward? Those moments rarely appear on a stat sheet, yet they often tell me far more than anything I will see during the next 2 hours of practice. Because basketball skills help me understand the athlete. Human behavior helps me understand the person. And those are not always the same. Perhaps that's why I no longer believe the first responsibility of a coach is teaching. I believe the first responsibility is learning. Learning who these young people are, learning how they think, how they respond to pressure, how they communicate, what motivates them, what discourages them, what kind of environment allows them to grow. Only after I begin understanding those things do I believe I have earned the right to coach them. Because coaching without understanding often becomes assumption, and assumption is a dangerous foundation for leadership. The longer I coach, the more I convince that great coaching doesn't begin with a practice plan. It begins with humility. The humility to look at every new athlete and quietly admit, I don't know your story yet. And until I understand that story, I haven't really started coaching. I have only started watching basketball. Once I begin to understand the people on my team, another challenge immediately presents itself. How do I coach 12 or 15 completely different personalities with one voice? I don't think there's a question that has challenged me more throughout my coaching career. When I was younger, I believed consistency meant coaching everyone exactly the same way. I thought fairness meant delivering the same message, using the same tone, and holding every player to the same conversation. But today I see that very differently. Fairness doesn't always mean the sameness. Fairness means giving every athlete what they need to grow while holding everyone to the same standards. Those are two completely different ideas. The standards should never change. Communication often should. That's one of the most difficult skills a coach ever develops. Some athletes need direct feedback, others need time to process before they can truly hear what you are saying. Some players want every detail explained, others only need one clear instruction before they are ready to compete. Some athletes become motivated when challenged publicly, others lose confidence the moment they feel embarrassed in front of teammates. If we ignore those differences, we often mistake ineffective communication for poor character. Sometimes the athlete isn't refusing to learn. Perhaps they simply haven't been coached in a way they understand. That realization changed the question I ask myself. Instead of asking, why isn't this player listening? I first ask, have I communicated this in the best way for this individual? Those questions require humility because they force us to examine ourselves before judging someone else. Communication is not simply about delivering information. It's about making sure the information is actually received. Those are not the same thing. One lesson I continue learning is that coaches spend far too much time talking and far too little time asking questions. Questions reveal understanding. Questions reveal confusion. Questions reveal confidence. Questions reveal fear. Sometimes I finish explaining something and I simply ask, hey, tell me what you understood. Not because I'm testing the athlete, but I'm testing my communication. If the message wasn't understood, my first assumption should not be that the player wasn't listening. Perhaps I wasn't as clear as I thought. That mindset changes everything. It changes the relationship between coach and an athlete from confrontation to collaboration. Another lesson experience has taught me is that timing matters almost as much as words. Not every mistake needs immediate correction. Emotion changes how people receive information. An athlete who has just made a costly turnover may not hear anything beyond disappointment. A player frustrated with their own performance may need a moment before they are ready to learn. Sometimes the best coaching decision is not speaking immediately. It's waiting. Waiting until emotion settles. Waiting until curiosity replaces defensiveness. Because learning happens far more effectively when people feel safe enough to reflect instead of feeling forced to defend themselves. That doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations, though. In fact, some of the most important conversations a coach will ever have are uncomfortable. Discussing playing time, changing someone's role, addressing poor habits, holding athletes accountable for behavior that affects the team. Those conversations cannot be avoided. They can be handled with honesty, consistency, and respect. One principle has guided me throughout my coaching career. Never surprise a player with a decision they never saw coming. If an athlete loses playing time, they should already understand why. If expectations change, they should know what those expectations are. If improvement is needed, they should know exactly what success looks like. Clarity removes confusion. Confusion creates frustration, and frustration often becomes conflict. Many conflicts in coaching are not caused by difficult athletes. They begin because expectations were never communicated clearly in the first place. Communication also requires boundaries. Young coaches often believe that building strong relationships means becoming close friends with every athlete. I no longer believe that. Healthy relationships are built on trust, professionalism, and consistency. Athletes should know that your care for them is genuine, but they should also know that your decisions are guided by what is best for the individual and the team, not by personal preference or emotion. That professional consistency protects everyone. It protects the athlete, it protects the coach, it protects the culture. Perhaps that's the greatest lesson communication has taught me. The purpose of communication is not to make every athlete agree with every decision, because that will never happen. The purpose is to create enough trust that even when athletes disagree, they never have to question your integrity. Because when trust exists, difficult conversations become opportunities for growth rather than reasons for division. And that's where real coaching begins. Once you begin understanding your athletes and learning how to communicate with them effectively, another responsibility emerges. Perhaps the most important responsibility a coach has, helping every athlete discover where they belong. I think this is where many coaches unintentionally fall short. We spend countless hours teaching offensive concepts, defensive systems, and technical skills, yet we often assume players naturally understand their place within the team. In my experience, they rarely do. Every athlete is asking questions whether they say them out loud or not. Where do I fit? Why am I here? What do you expect from me? How do I help this team? Do you believe in me? If those questions remain unanswered, athletes often create their own answers. Sometimes those answers are accurate, often they are not. One player begins believing, hey, coach doesn't trust me, and another concludes, I'm just here to make up the numbers. Someone else starts thinking, if I'm not scoring, I don't matter. Those stories become dangerous because people begin behaving according to what they believe about themselves. One of the greatest gifts a coach can give an athlete is clarity. Clarity about expectations, responsibility, opportunities, and most importantly, clarity about value. Every team has a leading scorer, but not every team has someone who brings people together after difficult losses. Well, every team has a point guard, right? But not every team has someone who quietly sets the standard every single day in practice. Some athletes lead with their voice, others lead through consistency. Some challenge teammates, others encourage them. Some raise the intensity, others bring calm when emotions become overwhelming. Some create confidence, others create accountability. Every one of those roles matter. The mistake many coaches make is celebrating only the roles that appear on a stat sheet. Championship teams are rarely built that way. Championship teams are built because people understand how their individual strengths contribute to something much larger than themselves. That requires intentional leadership. It requires conversation. It requires honesty. Sometimes it requires telling a talented athlete that their greatest contribution this season isn't scoring more points. It's becoming a better leader. Sometimes it requires telling a reserve player that the energy they bring to practice every day is helping shape the culture of the entire program. And those conversations matter because people commit more deeply when they understand their purpose. One lesson I have learned is that roles should never become labels. Just because someone begins the season as a role player doesn't mean that there is where their journey ends. Hey, people grow, confidence grows, develops, trust is earned. A freshman today may become tomorrow's captain. A quiet athlete may eventually become the strongest voice in the locker room. Our responsibility as coaches is not simply to assign roles, it is to create an environment where people continue growing. beyond the role they currently have. That requires us keep observing, keep listening, keep challenging, keep believing in people, sometimes before they believe in themselves. Because coaching is never stats. Neither are people. Perhaps that's why I believe coaching is one of the most remarkable professions in the world. Every season, a new group of young people places part of their future in your hands. Not completely, but enough that your words, your standards, your expectations, and your example can influence the direction of their lives. That responsibility should humble every coach. Years from now, very few athletes will remember your favorite offensive sets. Most won't remember your scouting report before an important game, but they will remember whether your program helped them become more disciplined, more resilient, more accountable, confident, better teammates, better leaders, better people, and perhaps that's the question every coach should ask before every season begins. Who will these young people become because they spent the season with us? Because if the only thing your athletes leave with is better basketball skills, yeah, then a good job. But if they leave with greater confidence, a strong character, a clear sense of purpose, a deeper understanding of teamwork, and the belief that they are capable of becoming more than they once imagined, then you have done something far greater than coaching basketball. You have helped shape the life. And to me, that's the responsibility. That's the privilege. And that's the legacy of every truly great coach. So that at the end of every season, the scoreboard tells us who won the games. Time tells us who changed people.